All right, everybody, welcome back. Core stability, part three. We've gone over gross anatomy of core stability in part one, functional anatomy in part two, and this part we're going to get into more of we'll say stationary exercises that can help you train the core. So first, two kind of premises that go with training the core that you should be familiar with. The first off is center of gravity. We won't get into too much of the forces or anything like that, too much of the physics or biomechanics of it. But if you do choose to kind of look further into this, having some knowledge of center of gravity or familiarity with the word will help you, because males have basically a higher center of gravity than females. The male's center of gravity is more at the base of the sternum, whereas the female's center of gravity is more in the center of the pelvis. So knowing that kind of helps understand too how sometimes certain people have an easier time doing an exercise versus others that have a harder time. I talked about that in part one, I think, at the end of part one. So the other premise is the base of support. This will be helpful for you when deciding if exercise is too hard or too easy for you. This will help kind of modify that specific exercise to make it tailor fit for what level of training you're already at. So the first one there is points of contact. If we're doing an exercise and we have 4 points of contact with the ground, that's usually a more stable environment, and it's a little bit easier for your core musculature to perform the exercise. Whereas if we have either 3 or 2 points of contact with the surface, it then makes it a little bit harder, and you'll see that in the slides to come. Training surface again. So if we have like hardwood floor or pavement, or we'll even say maybe turf, which may be like a stiffer turf, some of the older stuff. That's really a hard surface, and that's gonna, as much as force as you push into it, it's gonna give that right back. So those tend to be a little bit easier, or a more stable surface, we'll say. Whereas if you have grass or sod, or if you're indoors, maybe carpeted surface, those tend to be a little bit more unstable. So if an exercise is really easy, you could add maybe a couch cushion or an inflatable pad or a yoga mat rolled up or something to kind of give you an unstable surface to make that exercise more challenging. Same goes with if you're trying to do this exercise on a really soft, squishy carpet, and you're having trouble, move to maybe a harder surface, and that might help you along until you get that core muscle working to the point where you can then move to an unstable surface. And then the third one there, I put external forces. That's really more if you have at your disposal resistance bands or dumbbells or weight vests, things like that. That's when those come into play. So then really the idea is that you could put a band pulling on your pelvis as you're trying to hold a plank, and then your core musculature not only has to account for your body weight, the center where your center of gravity is, how many points of contact you have, what stable surface or unstable surface you're on. It also has to fight against that external resistance that you're applying. So just keep those in mind, and then we'll go from there. So when I start training the core, I always tell people to remember, especially for you guys that have watched part one to part two, remember your gross anatomy and your functional anatomy when you're doing these exercises. Imagery is a really powerful tool here that athletes use all the time. If you're a baseball athlete and you're hitting off a tee, you're imagining you're hitting that baseball in a real life situation, even though you're hitting it off a tee. That's going to make you a much better athlete, much more refined at that skill. So same goes here. When you're doing a plank, make sure that you're thinking about what muscles are we trying to strengthen here. Our a plank is great because we're really getting all of them. Our gluteal complex, our abdominal complex, the posterior lumbopelvic complex. All of them, quad, hamstring, inner thigh. So At the bottom here, we see a full plank. This is a functional full plank push-up position, is sometimes helpful. And then at the top there is a half plank or a modified one. So the uh, so basically, you'll see. I mean, the only difference between these is that we have we're further away from the ground here, so we've got more gravitational pull pulling on us when we're in our full plank, and we've got obviously a shorter distance. So the half plank should be easier progression than the full plank. So just keep that in mind. If you're struggling with the full plank, just drop to a half plank. And then after one or two or three training sessions, again try the full planks, and then you can mess with the surfaces, kind of put a pillow under a hand or under your feet, or double stack the legs to give you only 3 points of contact instead of 2 hands and 2 feet, things like that. Same goes here for side planks, right? So this is a side plank. We're looking at kind of external obliques, internal obliques, quadratus lumborum. Some of those just that we didn't really target with the. So here we have 2 points of contact on the bottom full side plank, I should say, which is the hand and the outside of the foot there. And again, a little bit easier would be the half side plank. And if that's still challenging or too challenging, I should say, just unstack the feet and put them side by side. It's called like tandem stance. So you basically have like your left in front of your right, and then on your elbow. So you'd have kind of a 3-point stance there, or a tripod one. So definitely side planks are really good for training the core. Again, you can do these for sets, reps, time. Usually the planks I'll do for time. Anyway, try and start for 30 seconds and then work anywhere up to like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So the next one here is bird dog plank progression. These are challenging when you're in the full plank position. So I've started off here left to right in the quadruped position, and then just holding one leg out. So you extend the hip, squeeze the glute complex. Remembering there we are. So now that would be the second one in would be a 3-point stance, right? So only 3 points of contact. Again, we go from 4 to 3 to now I have opposite arm, opposite leg. It's tough to tell there, but that's right arm, left leg. And so now we're down to 2 points of contact, but with a stable base of support because we're closer to the ground. And then when we go to the most challenging would be in that full kind of plank position, raising a leg, raising the opposite arm, opposite leg. And again, you can try and hold that for time, anywhere, 3 by 12, 4 by 15, things like that. Or you could do slow and progressive reps, just kind of going from the full plank position, raise arm, raise leg, place arm, place leg. Slow and progressive is key there. Don't just fire them both up and count it as a rep, because that's you're not balancing. You're not firing those muscles. You're just kind of rapidly going through that motion. So it's got to be slow. It's got to be progressive, and it's got to kind of train the muscles that we're trying to go after. So here we go through a series of I'll give you basically the picture, the end range, and then the gift portion of it. But here's the quadruped position. Is great for spine mobility and core exercises. I like this one a lot. This is just a donkey kick. It's pretty simple to do, but it's really a great glute max exercise. So with starting off quadruped position, you tighten your abdominal complex, tighten your posterior lumbopelvic hip region, and then you slowly but forcefully extend that leg, bending the knee, squeezes the glute. And then the key here is just don't sag. You don't want to lose your abdominal contraction. So however high you can go, you go. And then again, the verbal cue: first tighten the core, maintain that contraction, then go through your leg movement. A starting point for these, would be like 3 sets of 8 I like to start with, and depending on how many of you're doing, or how often. I mean, you could always go like 4 by 12, 4 by 15, to really kind of, once you're doing them properly, and both sides. Always do both sides on these. Never do just the unilateral exercise. Next one up is very similar. It's the quadruped position on the left. End range would be kind of almost out to parallel. Depends on your range of motion, how flexible you are, and things like that. But the motion would be like this. It would be from quadruped to lifting that bent leg, maintaining a good core contraction, and don't roll the hips, so don't rotate your spine. Don't roll the hips. Just go as far as your leg can go. And that's a common one that I'll see, is people just trying to really fire that leg up quickly and high, whereas the height and the rate of speed aren't important. It's more the quality of contraction and how perfect your posture can be while you do it. Moving to more of a side lying exercises. I will sometimes call these side lie heel to the sky as like a reference, but basically you're lying on your side, your hips are in line with your shoulders. You see from the first picture here, your first motion is raise the leg so it's parallel at the same plane, and then you internally rotate your whole leg. So this really, the motion comes from the hip, but it's going to look like your ankle is just pointed, your foot's pointed to the ground, and your heel would be then pointed a little bit to the sky. So as a verbal cue, I say side lie, heel to the sky, but realize that you're lying on your side, you're internally rotating your leg, but not rolling your hips forward. And then raising the leg only about 8 to 12 inches, and then returning it to the other foot. Raise it up 8 to 12 inches, return it to the other foot. You don't need to go crazy high. You don't need to be doing kind of like a full split in the air. It's really just 8 to 12 inches, slow and progressive, 3 by 8, 3 by 12, 4 by 15. And you're really going to feel like a muscular burn, a good burn kind of in your hip, where you're targeting those abductors of the hip. So your glute medius, your glute minimus, tensor fasciae lata, things like that. Again, another one, very similar, starting from that side lie position, raise the foot up, but this time we don't rotate the leg, you just flex the hip. So I call these side lie bicycle, whereas you can see from the third picture there, it's kind of, that's the motion of it. The whole idea here is you want to maintain this parallel plane to the ground. Because what happens is, as your muscles of your hip begin to fatigue, the tendency is for your knee to almost dip towards the floor. And so you want to resist that and go nice and slow through that entire plane. So the verbal cue: tighten the core, flex the hip, keeping the knee at 90. Don't allow the knee to dip below parallel with the floor as you repeat that motion. Okay. And again, make sure you're doing both sides on all these. This one's good because it targets that inner thigh complex, or that medial thigh complex. Remember our adductor muscle groups, the gracilis pectineus, things like that. So we're lying on our side. We place that leg behind the leg behind the side being trained, and bend it. So our starting position looks something like this. This leg is put behind the leg we're training. And then we try and keep this leg that was in contact with the ground, we raise it up as high as it will comfortably go. There's not usually a ton of motion there. And then slowly return it back towards the ground and repeat. So this is a good one because it really strengthens the groin, the inner muscles of the leg. And there's not too many of these other ones that we're able to do it in this fashion. So here we go. This one is good because we lie prone, so on our stomach. I call these Supermans or Superwomans. You can call them superheroes, whatever you want. But the idea is we're lying on our stomach. Our hands are out fully straight. When you go to perform the motion, you basically will extend your trunk raise your arms into almost like a Y, like you're flying. That's where the Superman, Superwoman comes into play. Um, and then lift your feet off the ground. So you can picture if you were to be flying through the air, that's the position you would want to be in. Now, when you get up to that position, you want to squeeze your gluteal complex. You want to pinch your shoulder blades together, right? And you want to keep your feet off the ground and your feet and legs, really, even like the front of your thighs. So this is a great exercise. Number one, it's difficult. So I mean, so don't be afraid to start at, even if it's 6 sets of 15 seconds or 5 sets of 20 seconds. But the idea is you don't really want to be arching your spine. You want to be extending your trunk. And then when you get up there, it's really squeeze your shoulder blades, squeeze your glutes, squeeze your shoulder blades, squeeze your glutes, and you're going to feel that core musculature working in being trained. So the next one here is another glute complex or another training exercise. It's a glute bridge. You would start in this called the hook lying position. So lying on your back with your feet bent like this. You would then press your hips to the sky and squeeze your glutes. So now you can do this for 5 sets of a minute, whereas you're just squeezing the entire time, and then you return, rest for 60 to 90 seconds, do it again. Or you could say, I'm going to go for 2 minutes. I'm just going to slowly raise up, press my hips, squeeze my glutes, 1,000, 2,000, slowly go back down. Touch the ground, start to raise back up, squeeze the glutes, 1,000, 2,000, go back down. So however you want to do it is fine. Just realize with all of these, whether you're doing it for duration or reps or sets, to always have a progression in mind and write down your each time you do your daily training, write down what you did and for how long. So that way you have a way to look back on it and see if you're trending in a positive direction. So just to recap the core a little bit, this is part 3. Part 4 is going to be more of functional core exercises where we're actually moving along with it. But so what I like to get across here is perfect practice makes perfect, right? Now, you may have heard that before, but just going through these exercises and going through the motions and doing them just to do them, you won't get the benefit as much as you could. And not to mention, you can actually put yourself in a position where you're doing more harm than good when it comes to spinal mobility, stress on the actual spine itself. You could be tightening up your hip flexors even more than they may have been, weakening your glutes. So really, when I say to do these in place training exercises, set aside 20 or 30 minutes and really focus on what you're doing and don't rush the progression. If you're struggling with something, choose the easier one. Give yourself a better base of support. Give yourself a harder surface to work on, and really then begin to progress at your own pace. And some exercises you might be at an advanced level. Other exercises you might be at a beginner. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to find out where you individually are at, where then you can progress from. Hard isometric contractions for progressive duration is the goal. That's wordy, but basically what that means is focus on what you're doing. Have the anatomy in mind while you're doing these exercises, and you want to, whatever you're trying to target, you want to train that muscle. So really squeeze that particular muscle group, and hold for as long as you can, and then their progressive duration is. That's 30 seconds. The next time you do it, try and do 40 seconds. Next time you do it, try and 45, 50, 60 seconds, So leading into increased sets and repetitions, increase them slowly, okay? You need to allow for appropriate muscular education to occur. Some of this stuff that we do, some of these exercises for the core, you will feel stronger. You will be more stable. You will respond better to training, other training loads, and it's just simply because you've made that muscular neuromuscular pathway or brain muscle connection really strong. So don't be in a rush to go from 3x8 to 3x10 to 3x15 to 4x35. Stay at 3x8 for a couple days. Then go 3x10, then go 3x12, then go 3x15. and really allow for that contraction to occur. And then the selling point, again, daily core focused training can improve spinal stability, neuromuscular control, and increased weight room metrics. There's more. It can do more than that. I just want you guys to realize that this doesn't take very long. Whether you're a student athlete, a collegiate athlete, an administrator, or just a fan of Yorktown sports medicine, of touching it or watching this video, this will help you, and you can make 20 or 30 minutes out of your day. You can do them in the morning, right when you wake up, do them before you go to bed. They're not going to get your blood pressure way up. They're not going to really get you sweating a ton. I mean, you will feel the muscular burn, and you will feel a lot better once you start doing these. But there is definitely 20 to 30 minutes of your day that you can set aside to do these exercises.